Welcome to Assessment Reimagined. This is part 2 of our series on assessment, focusing on assessment delivery in the age of AI. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we work and live. We pay our respects to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures and to elders past, present and emerging. A warm welcome to everyone joining us today. So just to frame this conversation today as everybody is joining us, we wanted to acknowledge one thing up front, that AI isn't going away. The future of assessment demands an approach, not avoidance, and today's discussion explores what that looks like in practice. Now it's time to meet our subject matter experts for today. So first up, we have Phil. Welcome, Phil.
Hey, welcome everyone.
Phil is a strategy, technology and capability advisor working across corporate, government and tertiary education, with a background spanning quality management systems, digital transformation and learning technologies. He's now focused on AI in the sector as founder of Tomorrow Vet, an AI-enabled platform for Australian vet, and co-founder of Expert Grounded AI, EGAI, where the focus is on AI that's safe and defensible and simply good for learning. Welcome, Phil. Thank you so much for coming and joining us today.
Oh, thanks, Helen. Appreciate it.
And we have our one and only Miles. Miles is in our customer success team at Cloud Assess. He works with RTOs and frontline workforces to get the most from their assessment and training tools. He knows the assessors chair firsthand with a background as an academic lead and as a trainer assessor, which gives him a practical read on what AI means for day-to-day assessment. Thanks, Miles, for joining us today as well and sharing your knowledge. So before I let the experts take over, I just wanted to let you all know, hopefully everybody's joined now, what to expect. So if you join the Slido, we're going to create a word cloud in a second. But also, if you've got any questions along the way, please use the chat. And then there'll be a discussion with Phil and Miles. And of course, we'll send you the recording and resources within 48 hours after the webinar. So I'll get the word cloud started, and Miles, Phil, over to you.
Cool. Thanks, Helen. Cool. So, good morning, everyone. Good afternoon for the ones in New Zealand. Good morning, very early for the ones in Western Australia. The Slido is just a kind of way to warm up the room. And in a word, how do you feel about AI in assessment right now? Already, we've got people coming in. So let's give this a few minutes. These word clouds are a really good way of kind of temperature checking the room. We have about 700 people coming into this webinar today. I like that the word curious has already become the front of this. That's a really good mindset, and equally balanced with cautious. That's good to see too. What would you say, Phil, in a word? How do you feel?
I've got a couple of them in there. I use AI on an ongoing basis daily. So I am very excited about what we can achieve with the use of AI in a whole range of different aspects. Obviously, we're talking about assessment today, which is a key focus for us and for our sector and for our industries, for our regulator as well, of course. So I'm very excited about what we can be doing with AI, but also recognise that we have some challenges at the moment. And I can see someone's dropped challenge in there, which is a great one. So yes, we do need to be a little bit cautious about what we're doing and make sure that we're doing our implementations in an effective way.
I like that we've got some positive words coming through as well. Optimistic is a good word. I like that. I like to think that the future is a bright place. So being optimistic and being positive about this is a good start. Intrigued. I like that.
I love
too.
enthusiastic in there as well, mate. Mind-boggling. I do feel a bit mind-boggling, I've got to say, on an ongoing basis, that it opens so many doors. There's so many things that we can do. There's so many opportunities. One of the things, just while we've got the word poll up, hi to Slido, I'm going to be a bit cheeky here, but we have just coded our own polling tool. So literally in the last 2 weeks, we've turned off the tool that we were using previously, and we've got our own custom polling tool now that we're using live in sessions just like this with word clouds and a whole range of other different tools that all of the other polling tools that we've used in the past don't have. We've been able to custom build something for exactly the tools that we want to use and in exactly the way that we want to use it. So even something as simple as doing live polls, the opportunities abound now where we're not limited to whatever the particular features are of the particular solution that we've paid for.
No, awesome. I think this kind of game almost is always fun to see, because I like seeing varying opinions basically. So I can see someone has put in defeated. So it just up to a more
the robots aren't here yet. Give us some time. Give us some time.
Scary and helpless. That's a hard one too. Scary and helpless. Great up to an extent. Can't ignore capitals. I like the fact that we are all understanding that AI is pretty much braided into most things. And this is kind of what the webinar today will talk about and ask the questions that are more piercing behind it. But I think we've got a good sense of things from this.
Yeah, I think that's a great word cloud. There's some great, a great mix of responses there, and I think a really good capture of the entire community response to AI as well. It's something that that has been worked on for decades, but came a little bit out of the blue, even though we've had those decades of work in November 2022 with the release of GPT, and has really taken the world by storm. And with anything new and shiny and a little bit problematic and expensive and perhaps hard to access for some in our community, or easy to access for others in our community, there's all of these implications, these factors and implications that we're still grappling with as a society, and obviously as governments across the world, and also in our sectors, including our vet sector.
Yeah, it's that problem where things are accelerating so quickly. We haven't got the time to slow down and unpack it, because by the time we do, there's already a new expectation of us. And I'm hoping today's webinar can allow us to unpack some of those more uncomfortable questions, the ones that actually matter, because I find those questions the most interesting.
That makes me a little uncomfortable, I've got to say, Miles, but we'll see. We'll see how we go, because those uncomfortable questions, I'm assuming, are going to be coming this way.
Oh, absolutely. That's the absolute reason why you're here, mate. So
love it. Love it. Love it.
All right. So let's progress forward, and I'll share my screen for this one. So the first place we'll start at is where we're currently up to. So your previous webinars, and either led by you or with others, have kind of talked about the ASQA principles that have emerged recently. So today's session isn't to unpack these again, it's to kind of ask the questions around it, specifically for learners, for trainers, assessors, and the RTO in general. But these principles, these are a great kind of starting point, but again, they are quite abstract still. And there are still questions. Yeah, and I guess that can't be avoided because of the expansive context that is the vet sector.
I think the regulator's done an amazing job with these principles, not only the principles themselves, but the way that they've gone about the documentation and implementation of these. I would have preferred them to be a little bit faster. Having said that, and I say that with love, when we think about organisations like TEXA that moved really, really quickly in this area, or relatively quickly, certainly much more quickly than what ASQA has done. Having said that, we might argue that the integrity issue, the academic integrity issue, or the assessment issue, if you like, with higher education is much more pronounced than it is in the vet sector. And perhaps that's why the regulator moved much more quickly. But we have been waiting a little while. I did give November 2022, so we're sort of well past 3.5 years into this journey, and we now have the principles. And again, it is useful. It's very, very useful timing. We've had the National AI Centre release several sets of principles at the end of last year, October and November last year, that really set the scene for that principle 1 around governance. I love that that is principle 1. And I love that it's in black. It's black and white. We must govern what we do. Before we do anything else, the experimenting that we've been doing, I see you guys, the last 3.5 years, we've all been playing with bits and pieces, but the time has come for us to stop doing that. And we must implement our effective governance frameworks and ensure that we've got that top-down governance of what's going on. And then the second principle, we're following on very closely from that, and is, I think, the top question, including when we get into talking about assessment, is where's the human? So we talk about human in the loop. We talk about human oversight, human accountability. That word there is very, very important, human. So it is humans who are making decisions around assessment. So very, very important for us to highlight that, and we can be talking about other things as well, but assessment is our target today. So great to be seeing that we're effectively governing what we're doing in the first instance, and then very, very secondly, very, very importantly, particularly when it comes to assessment, is it's humans who are still doing that work.
I just want to highlight a comment that's come through the chat. So Andre here is a great comment. He says that it's curious, excited, and apprehensive. It's like looking at a glass Trojan horse. We know what's inside. We know what's inside will be dangerous, but we already have it in the castle.
The horse is bolted, as they say. I love that. Someone's been off to the IMAX, I suspect, in the last couple of weeks.
But it's true though. It's actually it is true. We can see the danger and we just run towards it without really asking the questions around it. And I think that's the part that I'm more interested in, is do we have a deliberate kind of approach towards it? Yeah, sure, it's dangerous. Sure, there's concerns. It can be mishandled. But if we're just blindly running towards it, then that's the concern. That's the larger concern.
Yeah,
so,
this is exactly right. I mean, we can carry that analogy forward and be thinking about the Wild West, like this is the OK Corral, if we want to be talking about horses. But even though it is the Wild West, there's still a corral. Like, we're still putting the horses somewhere and managing those horses. So I think perhaps that was the problem with the Trojans, that they didn't realise what they actually had. We do realise what we have, and we should realise this comes back to governance. What are the strengths? What are the weaknesses? Where can we apply this effectively? Where can we not apply this because of a whole range of risks or issues? And how do we go about extracting the opportunities? You know, risk management 101, we've got our risks, but we've also got our opportunities. So we have to mitigate the risks, but we have to exploit the opportunities. We have to extract that value from the opportunities that are coming towards us.
So there's 3 key topics for today's session. The first one is the question around authenticity. The second is around capability. And the third is around context. So those 3 topics alone will carry us through this entire webinar. So let's look at the first one, authenticity of evidence. This word that seems to come up immediately whenever the question of AI comes up. When evidence can involve AI, and what does authentic really mean, and where is the line? Because this is where we're going towards. AI has been braided into everything. So this presentation was created using AI. Google Slides has a great AI segment to it. So it's not as obvious as, okay, let's open ChatGPT, now we're in AI. Your phone. So Samsung has a great use on phones where you can AI do any image. So you can you can take a picture of something, put in a prompt and say, put a boat in this picture, and it does it. So that's AI as well. So the question really is, where is the line? When does evidence stop being authentic?
Well, that's a really great question. I want to go through this in a couple of stages. Let me just pick up that first point that as a starting point, I think it's a real danger in some respects that AI is being added to everything that we use. In that, coming back to that first point, how are you governing that AI usage? And I've been really critical. So again, I'm a huge fan of AI. So, I'm self-declaring, I'm using it every day, almost every minute of every day, and night as well, because I have agents that are working as I sleep. So I can get up in the morning and check what work was done overnight. So I am probably in one of the advanced users categories from an AI perspective. But I fully understand what it is that I'm doing and where the AI is being engaged and what it's being engaged for. And I have been really critical in the last, particularly the last 12 or 18 months, where systems are just turning AI on without telling anyone. So a great example that I keep using is MYOB. Hi, guys. Where I just logged into MYOB one day and an AI system popped up and said, what would you like us to check in your numbers? And I said, I don't want you to check anything in my numbers. Like, I really don't want you in my numbers, to be honest, nor anyone else for that matter, just quietly. Not that there's anything that shouldn't be in those numbers, but that's not something that I'm keen for you to be doing. So I think there is a danger as all of our solutions sort of run. Another example, as you mentioned with the phone, is I can't pick my phone up at the moment without Gemini popping up because I'm an Android user. Without Gemini popping up and wanting to start talking to me about something. How do I turn that off? Like, where did that come from? Why is it listening to me? So I think from an individual perspective, we might get some concern around that, and certainly from an organizational perspective. So if you now know, as we do, that we are required to govern every AI implementation that we have in our organization, how are we governing things that are just being turned on without our knowledge? You've got everyone here has a student management system. Hi, guys. If someone turns on AI in your student management system, when did they tell you that? And how did they tell you that? And what is that AI doing? And who approved it for use in your organization? So it's your organization that's required to govern what is going on in your organization. You can't have your tech solutions just turning things on without you actually deciding whether that's something that you want to use or not. So I think there's a really big message there in the first instance. And then when we bring this into assessment, a key challenge is obviously, as you mentioned, this authenticity. Now, what are we talking about? In the first instance, we're making judgments. So we're qualified assessors, we're making a judgment. We have to determine competency. That's a really critical word, and we're obviously talking about outcome standard 1.4 if you guys are wanting standards references. So we're determining something. So it's the human, it is the credentialed assessor, it's the qualified assessor that is determining that. AI cannot do that and should not do that, but certainly cannot. So in the first instance, we need to be thinking, we're determining something, our brains are turned on and we're using our judgment. We have to justify that judgment. So as an assessor, we must justify how are we making that judgment. What do we mean by justified? We're talking about we have to prove it's right. We have to be able to defend it. And that starts when we hand the paperwork in or if we're using technology as we should be these days, when we submit, we have to defend what we're doing, and it carries through to assessment validation, and it carries right through to internal and then external auditing. And that can be overturned, as we know. What are we up to? 43,000 qualification statement of attainment cancellations. So if the regulator's not comfortable with how we've gone about that determination, if the regulator's not comfortable with how we can, how we made that decision, was it right? Can we defend it? Then ultimately the graduates at the other end are going to lose their certification. So this is something that's really, really critical.
Well, let's reduce it to a really simple example. So if I submitted this presentation, say I was doing a BSB unit, make presentations, CMM 411, and I submitted this presentation that obviously has AI littered through it, would I be marked as wrong or right?
Well, that's a really interesting question. It's a great example because what we're talking about is a use case where we should be engaging with AI, or indeed we can be engaging with AI. I probably shouldn't say should, but if you're in my organisation, I'd definitely be saying should. But you can engage with AI in that example, which is something that AI is really good at, which is arranging information in certain ways and displaying it in certain ways in the first instance. But we need to come back to that decision from the qualified assessor. The assessor has to be assured that this is authentic. So when I'm making my judgment, and to be able to defend my judgment when I'm determining your competency in making a presentation and in preparing the resources for that, if we think about the slides, and I need to defend it, I have to show that it's your work. Now, what do we mean by authentic? Remembering, guys, we mean that it is original and it is genuine. Original means it belongs to you. So this is your presentation, using the example. And genuine is that it's real, that you really did this work. So what does real mean is then coming into this challenge. Did you really do this work? Yes, I did. I worked with AI. I used my AI assistant. It's a tool like any other tool. Remember, AI is not a person. We can't attribute competency to AI because it's not human. It's a tool that we are using, the same as any other tool, to produce the work that we're producing. So it comes back to, again, when we're thinking about that real, well, okay, how can I use AI? Can I? Should I? How can I use AI to demonstrate as a tool in order to demonstrate my competency in that work? So no different to saying, okay, back in the day, I used to use overhead projectors, and I had the plastic, the plastic transparencies, and we'd handwrite on the transparency. And then one day a computer came along and I didn't have to handwrite on the transparency anymore. I could use a computer and type in it and then print out the transparency. Does that mean it's not my work anymore? Now I can use AI to support the topics that I want to cover and the information that I want to display in the way I want to display it. So again, it's just another tool that I can be using. Very, very importantly, to come back to the core is, what can you do with it? What can you do with AI? And the answer to that question is in the industry standard and in industry practice. So does the industry standard, the competency standard, the unit of competency allow you to be using AI for this activity?
Well, that's also where we can go in the third topic as well. The third topic is around context, but it kind of echoes through all of this. If common industry use is to use AI to create something, wouldn't it make more sense to accept that as evidence during the training or the delivery of the product that gets them there? Like, why does it seem that we have to have this void of AI in the training and assessment, only for them to go to industry and realize it's the exact opposite? And not only are employers expecting to do it, they pay for it. They're saying, okay, any task that you're doing should be used through AI to maximize efficiency. If that's the end goal, shouldn't training and assessment echo that rather than combat it with old definitions of authenticity? Because
Exactly.
the same argument could be made of Microsoft Word when that first came out. People were getting alarmed that people weren't writing things. They didn't write this themselves, they typed it. That's not authentic. So it's the same thing. I can see it in the comments. Someone said the internet. So that's when the internet came out. Sure, that changed a lot of things too. But I don't think the concept of authenticity is moving as fast as the governance that you're asking for.
I think there's a key component here that people are often missing, which is coming back to AI being a tool. It's a tool that a human is using. And it comes back to that principle number one, governance. What AI can we use for what task? That's principle one, governance. So we're setting the expectations up front, and we've got a framework in place to manage risks and to engage in the opportunities that AI brings. So once we've got that understanding of what can we do with what tool, then principle number 2 is the human. This is a human using the tool. So it's a situation where a human starts the process and a human ends the process. Now, we do have some problems in that human in the loop, in that lots and lots of research, very famously the Melbourne University and KPMG study, but lots of research is showing that humans are not using the tool effectively. And one of the things they're doing, for example, is not checking the output. 2/3 of workers say that they will use AI content without checking it. And over half of workers will say that they've gotten in trouble. They've had some kind of issue at work over errors that AI made. So if you're a human and you're using a tool and you decide not to use that tool properly, that's on you. That's the consequences are on you. And when we bring that into authenticity for assessment, we have to be able to explain what is it that we're allowed to do with AI and what tools can we use? And then how did we use AI to produce this task? So in your example with the presentation, how did I use AI to support me to develop this presentation as a tool? And then we're going to be looking at the presentation, and I'm assuming we're going to be thinking about the style and the colors. Is this in the correct brand? Is it using the appropriate language? Is it laid out in an effective way? Is the information accurate? Like all the things that we would be looking at, regardless of whether AI was involved in the development of the resource or not. So it's a tool that's being used. The human that's using it is still responsible for the work.
Yeah, it's a good point. Before I kind of move into the next topic, I'm just mindful of time because these topics are deep. This presentation, if we keep using this example, it started off with a brief. So there was a brief written first. Then that was given through AI to kind of structure the slide deck. And then there was a review session that we had to kind of look through the slide deck, tweak it, adjust it, reorganize it, add things. So that analogy of a human at the beginning and a human at the end does make sense. Are we okay with the AI in between doing the legwork?
Depending on what the unit of competency says and requires and what industry says and requires. So I think you mentioned we're jumping to that as a later topic. It's what's going on in industry and how is that documented in the industry standard or the unit of competency. So we may very well see units of competency in future that mandate the use of AI. I think we're actually almost about to, when we think about the work of FSO and some of the AI capability units that FSO is working on. So it might not even be optional anymore in future when it comes down to what the industry expectation is.
So let's move forward to the second understanding around this, because so far we've kind of looked at the authenticity question. What about the capability of both the learners and the trainers and assessors that are part of this mix? Because this extends into questions around fairness. So what exactly are we expecting of learners that are in the course? Like what level of AI capability do we expect of them? How much emphasis should be given to this? What about learners with differing AI capability? Will the definitions change from RTO to RTO? And what do we expect of the trainers and assessors? What do they do in this process?
Love it, love it. There's a couple of comments in the chat here that I just want to pick up. We need to make sure that we separate the skill from the tool. The hammer is a tool. The skill is the person who's using the hammer correctly. That's the individual that has the skill. So again, I think that people are really thinking about AI in the wrong way. They're thinking about AI doing things without any kind of oversight. The AI is off running around doing all of these activities and producing all of these things everywhere with no one involved in that process. If that's happening, you've got a problem, because we require human oversight. There has to be a human in the loop, and typically at both ends, if not also in the middle of the activity. You might say, oh, we're going to lose the understanding of cognitive load theory because it's only AI that's developing the slides. So none of our students will ever understand cognitive load theory again. Well, that's completely wrong, because the human who's using the AI to develop the slides needs to be an expert in cognitive load theory, so that when AI gives you initial drafts, you can apply that expertise to work out, is this work appropriate, effective for what I'm going to use it for? Is it demonstrating effective cognitive load theory principles, or is it not? And if you're smart, you've got an AI that also understands cognitive load theory, so that it gives you outputs, it gives you the product that you can look at and say, oh yes, we have representative cognitive load theory. I think there's a real issue here again. I can see this in some of the comments coming through, that, oh, this will mean that these people won't be able to do this, or people won't be able to do that. If they're using AI incorrectly, that might happen. But that's not what we're saying. We're saying that we want skilled, capable people, and skilled and capable people can use the tools available to them, and that includes the tool of AI. So I think if you think about it in those terms, you'll find that it connects perhaps a little bit more clearly in terms of what we can or can't do. I love that you've used the term capability here, because we do talk a lot about literacy. We talk about digital literacy, AI literacy, and we also talk about digital capability and AI capability. It is a bit of semantics, but I think it's important that we understand that English words have meanings. When you use the term literacy, you're talking about that someone might know something. When you're talking about capability, you're talking about someone can do something. So it's fine to sort of know, a bit about what AI can do and what AI tools are. It's a completely other thing to be able to use AI capably to complete a task, to complete a particular activity. So I really like the use of the term capability, and I would encourage people to be thinking about literacy is important, but capability is where it's at. The Australian government has indicated DigComp 3.0 as our digital capability framework that we are using, and the Jobs and Skills Councils have adopted that framework. So again, just reflecting what the expectations are around usage. So what should we expect? Sorry, you're right.
Well, I was just going to think about how the trainers and assessors fit into this, because the learners will have varying capabilities. Encouraging appropriate use comes from the trainer and assessor in the room, and this links down from the governance policy of the RTO in general. But the trainer and assessor is also a person that may have varying capability in themselves. So how does that work when we have learners who are learning, trainers and assessors who are also finding their way through this, and the RTO trying to support all of it, especially in terms of upskilling? So who upskills the trainer and assessor? The RTO?
So let me come to that capability level again. Just watching some of the chat, and I find this really, really interesting. I use that hammer example for a reason, because I'm not a builder. My brother got all the building skills. He's a very, very successful builder. I think if we walked on to my brother's building site today, you might find the odd hammer, but I can tell you, you're going to find a lot of nail guns.
Interesting. That's an interesting analogy to unpack. So
we're improving the tools that you're using. It's still the carpenter using the tool, but the carpenter might well have the nail gun in his hand rather than the hammer. We need to be thinking about these things as tools. What capability should we expect our learners to have, our students, and also for our trainers and assessors to have? We need to expect them to have the capability that we expect of them to succeed. So if I take our trainers and assessors, first of all, they have responsibilities in our provider, and they have accountability for their work. So we need to support them to make sure that they've got the capability they need to meet their responsibilities and to be accountable for their work. So there's a joint obligation there. So if we were to take a different example, if we require a trainer and assessor to teach forklift operations, we expect them to have the capability of driving the forklift. Yeah, so same thing. If we expect the trainer and assessor to be supporting the use of AI as another tool because their industry is using AI, we would expect them to have the capability to use that tool. So there is a shared obligation there that all of us as professionals, as vet practitioners, as trainers and assessors, need to understand and need to be able to do, or at least have industry currency, have an understanding of the practices that are going on in industry. That includes all tools and all equipment that's relevant for our industry, and that includes AI. So we've got a professional obligation, and then from there, the organisation also has an obligation. So if the organisation is saying that we're going to be using trainers and assessors to do certain things, and those certain things include the use of AI, then our organisation needs to make sure that our personnel know how to use AI. Because if the trainer and assessor doesn't know how to use the forklift and then goes out there and kills someone, they're in strife, but guess what? The provider's also in strife. There's a dual obligation there. And I think we forget that sometimes, that as individuals, we push things onto providers, and as providers, we expect things of our individuals. So hopefully that's useful again in just taking that commentary further around how important it is to be thinking about this as a tool. When it comes to the learners, no different. They need to understand the expectations. So what do we expect of them? How are we using AI within our operations? How are we using AI within our courses? And then we need to make sure that they have the capability to be successful in doing that. And that might be similar to Outcome Standard 2.2, that they have to enter. We have to only enrol applicants who have the digital capability skills, LLND, the D's digital, remember guys, Outcome Standard 2.2. We can't enrol an applicant unless we've shown that they have the required skills and knowledge. So there's a starting point there. So we might be requiring a certain level of digital capability, including AI coming in, question mark, depending on the unit, the training product that they're enrolling in. And then secondly, how are we then teaching those skills? So AI is going to be taught within units of competency, the same as every other skill, every other piece of equipment, every other tool is being taught. You can't go through too many units of competency in work health and safety without teaching PPE, personal protective equipment, as a tool. I think it's going to be very similar with AI. You're not going to be able to go through too many units of competency impacted by AI without teaching how AI is being used to undertake those tasks.
All right, so what I'm hearing is a way to kind of ensure consistency is to drive this from industry. So whatever is happening in industry, because what the second question is the one that concerns me the most, is the consistency between RTOs. As a learner, I can tell you that if I'm in one RTO with one policy, if I go to another RTO, I have to relearn their policy. But if it stems from industry, then there would be better consistency, I'm guessing.
It comes down to the industry engagement, as you're highlighting, Miles, on a case-by-case basis. Stakeholder engagement, but particularly within that stakeholder engagement, industry engagement. Again, guys, obviously Outcome Standard 1.2, and we're talking about advice. So the reason the outcome standards, I'm a huge fan of how this particular outcome standard has been written. Advice and feedback. Advice and feedback. The advice is up front. The feedback is after delivery. It's been written that way for a reason. You have to get advice. You have to go out to all of your stakeholders, including, very importantly, industry, and get their advice on how you're supposed to be delivering your courses. Using my example from earlier, I'm in an accounting course. Is the RTO using MYB or using Xero? So what are we saying is variance. Appropriate use varies from RTO to RTO. Is it a problem that one RTO wants to use MYB and another RTO uses Xero? Are you going to force all students to learn both? I suspect industry is not going to want that. The industry is going to want the tool, the solution that's most used, or the top tools that are most used in their industry. So these are decisions that RTOs make every single day. Again, using another example we've already talked about, what brand of forklift are we talking about? So RTOs have differing brands of, is it a Toyota or is it a different brand? Like, we're talking about pretty minor differences really in terms of variance. The key component is, what is the expectation of the unit of competency, of the industry standard, and what advice have you received from your industry stakeholders about what their expectations are and how you deliver that unit of competency?
Because I'm thinking back to the word cloud at the beginning, and the common theme was apprehensive, uneasy, unsure. And I think that's very understandable, because the RTO doesn't have anything to align with. And I think a takeaway from this entire webinar, if we make it like a key point, industry alignment can help bring confidence to this puzzle. So if industry is okay with it, saying in this particular industry, we expect these tools to be used, I think that's the start. That's where RTOs can gain the confidence to build their governance. Because I think the biggest fear is building the wrong structure.
I think this is absolutely critical, and this is the challenge that we have as education providers, is we're always behind. We're always second. You know, to use a couple of examples, the first time an A380 landed in Australia, it wasn't owned by a training provider. It was owned by industry, obviously, Qantas. I suspect the first time a nail gun was used in Australia, it wasn't used at a training provider. I don't know for certain that example, but I suspect like industry innovates, industry gets this stuff first, and then we unfortunately very, very quickly rush to catch up. And that rush to catch up is in our curriculum, it's in our units of competency, it's in our courses, it's in our resources, it's in our people. We've got to rush to catch up with what industry is doing, because it's industry that's on the leading edge. It's industry that's innovating. It's industry that can afford, in the first instance, often the tools and the equipment that we don't have.
So that segues nicely kind of into our last key topic, which is context. Does the industry or the qualification level change how AI use should apply? So two main ideas: industry, so say leadership is one sort of industry, the business industry, and then disability being community services, just as examples. Will this determine what AI is appropriate respective to industry? And second to that, AQF behind it. So do you see that parallel?
I think that there's a couple of things in there. Let me deal with the AQF level first. AI in the first instance is coming for white collar work, has come for white collar work, has revolutionized white collar work. So when we're thinking about is there impacts depending on AQF level, I'd immediately highlight the impacts are at the higher AQF levels in the first instance. Now, that doesn't mean that AI isn't impacting across the full spectrum of work tasks, across all units of competency, across all industry sectors, across all AQF levels. But we know it's particularly hitting in the first instance in that white collar space. And that has a whole range of implications, including speeding up and making experienced workers a lot more productive, and perhaps having some alternate consequences or implications for newer workers, for example, graduates. So that higher level qualifications in the first instance is where you're going to see it. Having said that, it could be appearing anywhere. It's coming to technology near you. It's already in your phone, as you mentioned before, Miles. It's being added to technology every day. So if you've got a solution in industry, let's think, for example, anything technology related. If someone is a certificate 2 and they're having to fill in a hazard report at work, and the hazard report is now filled in on the tablet, and that technology has now got a little AI assistant that's turned on that's helping that certificate 2 person fill in that hazard report. So I think it's something that affects all levels, even though we're seeing the largest current impact in the certificate 4 and above space. Obviously, we have robotics coming very, very quickly. So I think if you would ask that question in 10 years' time, there's going to be quite a different answer. And if you're looking at everything that's happening in that robotics space, you'll understand what we're talking about there. When it comes to individual industries, absolutely. Each industry is determining, based on the tasks that need to be undertaken in that industry sector, how AI might be applied to support workers and to support organisations in that industry sector. So if we're thinking leadership, white collar work, huge amounts of research already that if you're engaging API to help you with things like KPIs, organisations that are engaged with API outperform organisations that did not engage with API. So leaders who are engaging in this area of leadership are outperforming those that are not engaging. And again, you were talking about obviously significant white collar work. When it comes to disability, we're talking about disability care. Certificate 4 level, but technical level, but we're still talking about care roles. Care roles, much more obviously human focused and human centered work. So you might see less AI in that space, certainly in the short term. Having said that, if anything that we're doing with technology, with tablets, with computers, we're going to be seeing that disability workers might be in terms of recording notes, it might be in terms of accessing information, it might be in terms of recording particular information that those workers will be using AI for different purposes.
So this theme is reoccurring now. I'm seeing it more and more from each of these topics. The starting point. So if you go back to ASQA's circle of principles, your favorite one, the governance one, where do you start? Yeah, that's going to be the new screenshot for this webinar, by the way. Where do you start this governance policy? Industry seems to be the common answer. So meet with industry, consult with them, and ask them what do they want to see.
I think
then work backwards.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's just such a great example. It's a classic example of what ASQA's done and why I think that they've taken the right approach. Leaving aside a few bits and pieces that we won't talk about today, is that they've said these are principles. There's not additional regulation because the regulation is already there. We are required already to effectively govern our organisations, 4.1. We are already required to ensure all of our personnel understand their responsibilities, accountabilities, 4.2, and understand the risks, 4.3, and to mitigate all of those risks. And in terms of doing that, we know that we've got to be delivering effective training, 1.1, and that has to reflect industry expectations. And we get those industry expectations from our stakeholder engagement, 1.2. So like this is already all there. We didn't need to recreate anything. I think the principles are good to give some clarity that this should be happening, but it's no different to what's already in the standards. It's just highlighting that we're supposed to already be doing this, guys. So we've been experimenting for 3.5 years, good, bad, indifferent. Any new technology requires experimentation. And then we need to get on with understanding what is effective use and then governing that effective use within our organisations.
Okay, so there's been a lot of clarity in this session because keep in mind that the policy framework of the vet sector is so wide that we can't see the ends of it in one easy go. Like it takes sessions like this to find the connections between these, to see, oh, that part there leads to this part, and that part there is reinforced by this one. So that's what I like about these sessions, that we can find these connections and give the people who are watching a starting point. So okay, after this session, the first starting point is this, and then they can move from there. That's often the hardest part, and funnily enough, that's what AI has helped us with, is overcoming that starting point. They'll do it for us.
Yeah, and let me say that starting point is your governing persons using our regulatory language. It's your board, it's your directors, it's your owners. That's where it starts. And I say that really, really deliberately. I think it's a really important point for everyone to keep in mind because that's not what we've been doing. We've all been running around, and we still are in many cases. We've got BYO AI. I see you guys, shadow AI out there. Things have been banned, but my phone, I can still do stuff. Like there's all of these other things coming on that have been going on, but it needs to start with your governing persons. We need to set the expectations. How are we going to engage with AI? What are the risks? We need to get in place our AI policy. That's a requirement, should already be in place. We then need to get in place our AI register. There's another requirement. What are we using? How are we using it? Who's responsible for it? What are the guardrails on it? We need to be doing our use cases. We've got them documented for each use of AI, what is being approved, the use case. We've done the risk assessment. There's a whole governance framework that's required to be in place before you put the first letter in the chat. And that's what we've not done. And we've not done it because we've been experimenting, but the time is now the time is actually past, but certainly now for vet providers to understand what the National AI Centre requires of us, understand what the privacy requirements are, the Office of the Australian Information Commissioner, to understand what our regulator requires of us, Australian Skills Quality Authority, or one of the other two if you're floating around in those spaces, and then implement that governance framework that reflects the expectations of our key stakeholder in the first instance, which is government. And once we've met that key stakeholder expectation around governments, we can then get on with everything that we want to be doing with AI.
So as we move towards the end of this kind of webinar, it's been great. Thanks for you were worried about my questions, and you handled every single one of them awesomely. So thank you for that.
Oh, cheers.
But
Appreciate
it. If we could boil it down into some bullet points, we would say industry, driving this from industry being a key point. You said the board, so the board or the exec for any organization, stemming from them as well. What other single kind of statements can you say to the viewers so they can take that away from today?
Oh, I think you've nailed it with the dot points here. So let's have a position. There's your governance. Head in the sand is not a strategy. It's not having a position. Your governing persons are required to have addressed this. So you must make sure, and I'm saying this, Miles, I'm conscious, just recently the university's report was released, 2025 Universities Report for New South Wales. And even our largest institutions in the country are yet to address this effectively, according to that report. So we really are behind the eight ball now, and being behind the eight ball creates all of these risks, and it also creates all of this uncertainty and concern and anxiety, because we're not just being really clear. Have a position, get your governance framework in place, get your policy position in place. How are we using AI? And then from there, forget about detecting it. So as you say, don't worry about just detecting it. We're using it. Of course it's there. What do you mean you're trying to detect it? I'll tell you right now, we're using it. It's not about detection. It's about, are we using it appropriately, authentically, for the unit of competency that we're using it for? And that comes back to that approach, that context within the unit of competency, within the industry expectations that we've been talking about. And if we understand all of that, then we can set the clear expectations for our learners. This is what you can and can't do. And for our personnel, this is what we expect of you as your employer. Just
on that point, how granular does it need to be? Like, if you go back to that example of Google Slides, do we have to specify the appropriate or inappropriate use of every possible one out there? Because wouldn't that make the policy obsolete by the time it comes out, because new things have come out by then? So
what we in terms of a governance framework, we've got that higher level on a policy position, and then we're approving tools for particular purposes. So we've done our use cases, our risk assessments, and we've approved this tool to do this or that tool to do that. And we're recording all of that in our AI register so that we can monitor and track it and eventually evaluate it. Outcome standard 4.4, systematic monitoring and evaluation, applies to AI as well, guys. And then from there, we're applying that on a case-by-case basis to what we're allowed to use it for. And when we're talking about assessment, that application comes down into the training and assessment strategy, where you're talking about the training product, qualification course, including what kinds of levels and what kinds of advice and feedback you've received. And then it goes right down to the task level in the assessment tool. So we already have that framework in place. This isn't additional work. We already know, unit by unit by unit, task by task by task, what the specifications are that need to happen for that assessment. It's in our assessment tools, if we've written them effectively, if they're actually effective assessment tools. So all we're doing is making sure that AI is included in that specification. And we might not have done that before, so that might feel like extra work, but it's no different to recording any other specification that you're recording in your assessment tool.
But on the other side, I'll challenge this. Would that create a new target for the auditor if we have an AI governance part in the TAS? If that's not clear enough, would that cause a new problem, or would that be?
So that's a really great question. Not having it is the first problem because we're required to have all of this in place. So we're just being really clear that we know guys that we're catching up. We know most organisations still don't have this. We're required to have it. You know, our regulators, National AI Centre, Office of the Australian Information Commissioner, Australian Skills Quality Authority, they're all lining up, telling us exactly what we're already supposed to have done. So, and ASQA's just released these principles, but as we've heard over and over and over, we were required to be doing this from the 1st of July 2025, when the 2025 standards were released. This is all just standards, compliance. So we are required to already have all of this in place. We know that we haven't done it all yet. I'm appreciating. That's going to be a bit more work, but it's just because it's a requirement that we now have. It's a brand new tool. When someone invented the nail gun, oh, gee, this is a massive problem. We're going to have to learn all of this new technology, and we've got to buy them, and where do we get the consumables from, and who's going to train all of our people how to use these damn nail gun things? Why would we ever want a nail gun? I've got no idea. Oh, apart from the fact that your carpenters will be 10 times more productive every day, I reckon that purchase and that training happened really, really quickly when nail guns first arrived. So just trying to again use the tool analogy for this. Ignoring it is not the solution. Putting in place the framework, the governance framework, and the expectations is the solution. And then we've got to make sure that we clearly communicate those expectations and that we build the capability if it's not there. So we do have that responsibility to be supporting the capability build. We can't just give them the nail gun without training them in how to use the nail gun, because when someone gets shot in the head with a nail...
Well, I think there's enough things from this webinar for people to think about now. I'm just mindful of time, and I do want to move to the outro. Thanks, Helen. So, over to you, Helen.
Thank you so much. The chat's been going off. I think you've pretty much answered all the questions. There's a couple there, but just before we do, we've got a few minutes for questions. I just wanted to let everybody know, if you haven't already, join the conversation on tomorrow.vet. Phil's actually set this up and it's incredible. You can scan this QR code to sign up for your free subscription. So I think it's absolutely brilliant. All of our team are using it and we're getting our insights daily now. So that's awesome. Thanks for putting that together, Phil.
Very kind.
And Miles, I think you've got control of the next screen. If anybody has any questions, they can pop them in the chat there. One of them that came up that I don't think we answered, I don't know if you've got an answer to this, Phil, about...
Oh, a very, very short answer. So we so I could talk about that for hours. ASQA, Australian Core Skills Framework, only covers language literacy and numeracy. We worked out we need to cover digital literacy at some point, and we built the digital literacy skills framework, the DLSF, and that was sort of riding along the ACSF for a little while. It was pretty ordinary. We reviewed that. We said that's rubbish. We've got to replace it, and it's sort of been decommissioned. In the meantime, the government built the digital capability framework. That was sort of only ever in draft, and perhaps we didn't do a great job of that. Along the way, the EU developed DigComp, which is the digital capability framework for the whole of the EU. And our government looked at that and said, why should we invent something new when they've done a great job? So we grabbed it, and we had DigComp 2.0, DigComp 2.2, and then about 18 months ago, the Australian government specified the DigComp along with FSIA if you're in ICT space, but generally industries will be using DigComp for digital capability. And now all of the jobs and skills councils have taken that on board, so you'll be seeing DigComp references and things like companion volume implementation guides. And Future Skills Organisation is about to finalise a whole range of brand new cross-sector units of competency targeting digital skills and also targeting AI skills. And those units of competency are directly aligned to DigComp 3.0.
Wow, that was amazing. Thank you for that. Just looking through.
You asked, sorry, you asked.
Yeah, that was amazing. Sharon mentioned this. Don't know if this is kind of covered in what you just discussed there.
Yeah, so that's a really interesting question. The training products, in the first instance, are tool agnostic. So the accounting is a really good example where it says, you know, you need to run a general ledger, you need to maintain your accounts payable, you need to maintain your accounts receivable, you need to raise an invoice. It doesn't say you have to use MYB, or it doesn't say you have to use Xero. So they're tool agnostic in the first instance. They're talking about what task has to be done, and the steps or stages, the elements, if you like, in the old traditional unit of competency model of how to do those tasks. So in many, many cases, we don't have to update units of competency because they're not specifying the tools. If industry is using AI to do that work, we should already be teaching AI in our units of competency, regardless of whether they reference AI or not. It's part of that industry engagement that Miles pulled out. Having said that, as I mentioned, FSO is working on cross-sector around digital capability and also AI capability. So we will have designated cross-sector units of competency if you need to do specific teaching of and certification of digital or AI skills.
Amazing. Thank you. Everybody else is saying thank you very much with a comment here. What an informative session provided by highly professional and knowledgeable presenters. Thank you for the broad information shared.
Very, very kind.
Thank you also for being amazing participants. So we're at time. I will close it off here, and I'll definitely be sending everybody the recording in the next couple of days. Along with the infographic and any other links that people have shared in the comments as well. So thank you very much, Miles and Phil. Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you at the next one.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.